Blumenfeld, and what's your name?
Adina.
Adina is my daughter. She's 3.5, and today we are going to make challah. And challah is something we make on a Friday because we're Jewish, and we have this for our Shabbat meal in the evening. And Adina likes to make it with me sometimes, so she is going to help me. And I'm going to show you step by step what to do. My year 10s, you've already made challah by braiding some dough that I already brought in, but I thought you'd like to know how to make the dough from scratch, and you can do it with some simple ingredients from home. And I'll tell you what they are. Okay, so we have got strong flour. You could probably get away with plain flour if you don't have any, but it should stay strong on it because this is the best for bread making because it's got a high gluten content.
And we have eggs.
We've got eggs. We're going to need 4 eggs and 1 egg yolk for this recipe.
And we have this.
Now we've already done that. That's the strong flour. We've got yeast.
And we have this.
So, Mummy talking. Shh. So yeast comes in a packet like this, or it comes in sachets. We're going to be using about 2 sachets worth, or about 14 grams of dried active yeast. We've got caster sugar, or granulated sugar if you don't have caster sugar, it's fine. We've already done that one. And we've got vegetable oil. Any vegetable oil or sunflower oil is fine. Olive oil doesn't work so well. We've already done that one. And we've got salt, fine table salt, okay? We're also going to have water, and optional ingredients, you can use poppy seeds, sesame seeds, or any other versions of like seeds and things that you can sprinkle on the top. I'm going to start making now, and I'm going to post the ingredients up separately. The recipe I'm working from is in cups and teaspoons, but I'm going to tell you what the gram and milliliters conversions are, and I'll write that all up for you, okay? So you can just follow along, and you can pause as you go and pick up the next stage. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to activate the yeast. This is the dried yeast, okay? So we need 2 1/4 teaspoons.
Can I hold it?
Yeah, you can hold it. Can you get a teaspoon for me?
I can't. Where is it?
Yeah, this is a teaspoon. Put it in the bowl.
Yeah. I can do it. I can do it.
Go on then. 1 in the bowl. Another one. And 1/4 is a little bit more. Okay, good. All right, now we're going to add to that 1 1/2 teaspoons of caster sugar.
Teaspoons. Which one should we do? Purple?
No, not purple, because that's tablespoons. We need the pink one, please.
Tablespoons.
This is a teaspoon. So we're going to have one of those. Can you get one of those? Can you put it in and get a spoon? Let me help you. Oh, it's a bit far down. 1. Pour it in. 2. Or 1 1/2. There we go. Okay.
3.
My phone mount isn't working. Don't laugh. It's not funny. Haha. Okay, so now we've got our sugar and our yeast in our bowl.
You're going to spill it.
I'm not going to spill it. And we're going to add to that about a cup water. Now this water is warm. What does warm mean? No, not hot. Warm means a little bit hot and a little bit cold. So we're going to add to this a cup of warm water. That's about 230 millilitres if you're working in millilitres. Okay, so we're going to add it in. Pour it in for me. Good job. And we are going to give this a little jiggle and a stir.
I'm going to do a jiggle.
Thank you. You can do a jiggle.
No, don't hold it for me.
Okay, thank you. Done. Put it down. Now, what's going to happen is the yeast is going to activate. It's going to come back to life. It's been sleeping.
Mum.
And it's going to start to eat the sugar, and it start to go frothy. And that's how we know. No, don't eat it. It's not supposed to be eaten yet. And that's how we know it's active. So I'll see you in about 10 minutes. All right, guys. So it's been 10 minutes. And I don't know if you can see here. It started to froth and foam. That means that the yeast has started to eat the sugar. And it's going to be active now. So we can start adding our flour. Now the recipe says 4 cups of flour. which is equivalent to about 480 grams, but you might not need all of it. You're going to add the flour a little bit at a time until you get the consistency that you want, okay? So we're going to start with vegetable oil. So I've got my vegetable oil, and it's a 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. I'll put the milliliter conversions up on when I load this up. So a 1/4 cup of vegetable oil goes in. Okay, and then we've got 2 eggs. So we're starting with 2 eggs. We're going to be adding the eggs one at a time, okay? And the other 2 eggs we're going to be using for glazing the dough when we finish. So if you're not confident with cracking in an egg straight into the mixture, crack it into a separate bowl or container first. Check for shell. Okay, so check for shell, check that there's no shell, and put that in. 1 more egg. Check for shell, that's fine, put that in. Okay, and we're going to add 1 yolk, so it's 2 eggs and 1 yolk. So with this, what we're going to do is we're going to separate the whites from the yolks. You tap your egg, and you can do this one of 2 ways. You can transfer it backwards and forwards between the eggshell, or you can just pour the whole egg into your hand and let it sieve through your fingers. Obviously make sure you've washed your hands first. So there's my egg yolk, and I'm going to add that in. Now this is called an enriched dough. Enriched means it's a very rich dough. It's got oil, which is a fat, and it's got eggs, and it makes it for a much chewier, softer, moist bread dough. It's kind of like a cross between a cake and a piece of bread, and it is delicious. Okay, so we've added our eggs. We now need to add the remaining sugar, which is a 1/4 cup. So caster sugar, 1/4 cup of sugar. Some recipes for challah also use honey, but we're going to be adding sugar. So 1/4 cup of sugar. Make sure there's no big lumps. Princess Adina, by the way, has a very short attention span, so I think I'm going to be continuing most of this by myself. Okay, so now what we're going to do is add our salt, which is 1.5. Oh dear, this mount is not going to work. Stop laughing! I can see you laughing. Okay, and we need to add 1.25 teaspoons of salt. So 1. Looks like a lot of salt, but bread really needs the salt for flavour. 1.25. Okay, we're going to mix these together. You can use a wooden spoon, a palette knife, whatever you've got. Now, some of you might not have scales at home. You might not have cup measures. So I'm going to try and figure out a way of doing this by using something that you've all got, maybe like a mug for tea or something like that, and see if we can work out the measurements that way. Because you don't really need any specialist equipment. It's all about ratios and understanding how much of one ingredient and how much of another. So in here, what we've got our activated yeast, we've got the sugar, the salt, the oil, and the 2 eggs plus 1 egg yolk with the water. Now we're going to start adding the flour a little bit at a time. Okay, so I've got my flour measured in a cup measure. I'm going to be adding about half a cup at a time. You can sieve it if you want to, but you don't really need to. So I'm going to stir it in. Just try and make sure you scrape down the sides of the bowl. Next half a cup. Stir it in.
Mama, I want to stir.
Okay. Stir.
Nice stir.
And you're going to repeat this with 4 cups of flour, half a cup at a time, okay? Look who's back! Princess Adina. Okay, we need to add 1 more cup. This is cup number 2, and we're going to mix it for me. So we're going to do...
Cup number 2.
Cup number 2. So we're going to do half a cup at a time. Mix it in, please. Okay, and the other half. Mix it in, please. Should we show them what it looks like?
Yeah.
This is after 2 cups. Let go a second, let me show them. Still very runny. We've got to keep adding some more flour. Keep stirring for me. Good job. It's just dough. Yuck. So this is going to be cup number 3. Open the no, 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 no. Stop it. Stop it. It's not cake. Don't eat it yet. It's not nice. I promise. Okay, cup number 3. You're going to help me stir it in. Half a cup at a time. Okay, hold the bowl though, please. Hold the bowl. Come on. Okay, stir it.
I can do it. I can do it. I don't want it.
Okay. Stop eating. Okay, last bit there. Cup number 3. Now when I'm going to do cup number 4 because it's going to get very difficult to stir. We've got to make sure we're scraping down. Stop it now. Stop. Scraping down the sides of the bowl. Don't ever try and do anything when you have a 3-year-old. Okay, so this is about 3.5 cups of flour. The dough is starting to come away from the sides of the bowl. It's quite a wet dough, which is fine. I have kept the other half a cup of flour, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that to help me knead the dough. I'm going to do it by hand because that's what you're probably going to have to do at home, unless you have a cake mixer which has got a dough hook attachment, in which case put it in that because it's a lot easier. Okay. Alright, so I've tipped the dough out onto my work surface. I've used the extra flour. You can come and watch, but don't touch, okay? Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to knead the dough. And you're not allowed to touch it, okay? So kneading the dough is going to help increase its elasticity. And what we're going to do is we're going to try and bring it all together. Stop licking the flour. And we're going to give it...
I only want to help you do that.
Okay, you can help me in 2 seconds, okay? We're going to give it a really, really good pummel on the work surface.
I want to do the pummel.
You want to do the pummel, okay? You can do the pummel. Give it a punch.
Punching.
Punching. You can punch it. You can stretch it out and bring it back. Stretch it out and bring it back. And we're going to keep doing this. And every time the dough feels like it's getting a little bit too sticky, you need to just add a tiny sprinkle of flour and carry on, okay? So we're going to do this.
It's a little bit sticky.
It's a little bit sticky. We're going to do this now for about
Mummy,
10 minutes, okay? Help me out here, please, Adina. So I've been kneading it for about 10 minutes and now what I have is a really nice smooth elastic ball of dough, which is quite tacky. It's a little bit sticky and that's how you want it to be. You don't want it to be dry at all. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a little bit of vegetable oil and a clean bowl, splash of vegetable oil. I'm going to rub it around in the bowl. I'm going to take my dough ball, tuck in the edges, and I'm going to put it into my oiled bowl like this. I'm going to cover it with some cling film. I'm going to leave it in a warm place and it's going to prove or rise, get bigger for about 2 hours. So I'll see you in 2 hours. So this is the challah dough after it has been in a warm place for 2 hours. I actually turned on my oven and then turned it off again and stuck it in there. And so it was a nice, warm, temperate place for it to rise. If it's in too hot a place, it could probably kill off the yeast, so you want to put it in a warm place. My kitchen is really cold, so it's not really a good place for it to rise, so I stuck it inside my oven. Okay, so what we're going to be doing, and you can see just how the yeast works. It's created all of these air bubbles inside the dough. It's a really, really sticky dough, which is fine. What we're going to do is we're going to tip it out onto the work surface, and we are going to knock it back to knock out some of that air. Okay, so what I've done is I've tipped out my dough onto a lightly oiled work surface. We don't want to work with any extra flour at this point. We want to keep the dough really, really sticky, really pliable, and if we add extra flour, it's going to dry it out, which is not what we want with a challah dough. And when I've tipped it out onto the work surface, I'm just going to punch it to remove some of those air bubbles. This is called knocking it back. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move all this dough to one side, and I am going to take some portions of it and I'm going to show you how to braid it, plait it and finish it in different ways. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a technique for creating the strands of dough that we're going to use to plait and to braid. There is a tip that I learned which helps to make them extra stretchy. So here it goes, I'll show you what to do. You need a rolling pin for this. If you don't have a rolling pin, then just skip this stage out. Take a small piece of dough and roll it into a really thin sausage shape. But if you have a rolling pin, great, have a go at this step. Okay, so we're going to take a piece of dough. This is probably about the size of a squash ball. Okay, I'm going to put it down on my oiled work surface, and you want to work with oily hands, no extra flour, remember, because we want to keep it nice and sticky. Okay, so take your rolling pin, and what you're going to do is you're going to roll it out into an oval shape. And you've got oil on the work surface, so it's not going to stick. So I've rolled it out into a long oval shape. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the side of the long edge and I'm going to roll it back into kind of like a Swiss roll with my hands, just grabbing it and rolling it back. And then what I've got here is I've got that strand, but it's kind of like a rolled up strand from my oval. And then when I want to roll this out to make it really thin, I'm just going to do this technique with my hands, so like massaging hands. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spread my fingers out like this, and I'm going to do that on the dough, spreading outwards as I go, and I'm going to be able to get it to be nice and thin and long. There we go. So remember to spread your fingers out, and it helps the dough to stretch. So that's one strand of challah. Remember I started off with a piece the size of a squash ball. Okay, so now I'm going to do that for 3 other strands because I'm going to be making a 4-strand challah. I'm going to show you that in slow motion one more time. Okay, so there is a piece the size of a squash ball. Roll it into a ball. Rolling pin. We're going to stretch it out into a long oval shape. We're going to take our long edge and we're going to roll it back up upon itself like a Swiss roll. And now we're going to do our massage hands outwards to get it really nice and stretchy and long. Okay? Okay, so here we've got 4 strands of challah, and what we're going to do is make sure that they're all the same sort of length before we start. And we're going to take one end and we're going to pinch the ends together. Okay, just the one end. Make sure that they're pinched. Okay, now to start this braid, we're going to make the first link in the chain by taking the right piece, take it all the way over to the side, take the left piece and take it all the way over to the other side. Okay, so that's the first link in the chain. Okay, so now we're going to start the braid. Take the piece on the furthest left, put it into the middle, and see this big gap that we've left here? We're going to take the other center piece and replace it. And it helps if every stage you do it, you spread the pieces out again. So we're going to take the furthest piece on the right, put it into the middle, and see this big gap that we've left here? We're going to replace it with the other center piece. So I'm going to take the furthest piece on the left, put it into the middle, and the big gap that we've left here, we're going to replace it with the other center piece. Take the piece on the right, put it into the middle, take the other center piece, replace it. You can kind of press them down as you go to help it stick. Take the piece on the left, put it into the middle, take the other center piece and replace it. And when you get to this point in the end, and you can't plait anymore, pinch them together, okay? So it's quite short, it's about the size of my hand, this particular one, and that was with 4 strands made out of 4 balls the size of squash balls, okay? So when you've done that one, you're going to put it on your greased baking tray, your greaseproof paper baking tray. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to make an individual challah roll. So you're going to take one strand that you've prepared the way that I showed you, and you're going to tie it in a knot. So you're going to go over, under, through, and create this really cute little knot. Okay, make sure that it's nice and compact, and that can go on your baking sheet. And one more that I'm going to show you is a traditional bread roll, which you can do with regular bread dough, but it works just as well with challah dough. So take your ball of challah dough, which is about the size of a squash ball, and you're going to place it on the work surface, and then you're going to take the edges and you're going to be tucking the edges of this piece of challah into the center. So tuck, tuck, tuck into the center, and you're going to work your way all the way around, and you're going to keep going around again, maybe for a second time, tucking the edges into the center. And what this does is this creates a really nice smooth top to your challah dough. So if you pinch all that together and turn it over, you end up with a really nice smooth top which you can shape, and then you're going to put it that way down onto your baking parchment. So here are all the challah that I made with that batch of dough. I've got 2 4-strand braids and I've got 4 challah rolls. Obviously if you want to work with bigger braids, then you can make a larger challah. These would be classed as like a small challah, and these are individual rolls. And what we're going to do now is that we've braided them, plaited them, we're going to leave them to have a second prove or a second rise for about half an hour to an hour in a warm place, or just on your work, an hour in a warm place, or just on your work surface. We're going to cover them with some cling film loosely so that they don't get dry and crusty on the top. Okay, so I'll come back to this in about half an hour. Okay, so here they are after my second prove, and you can see that they've risen again and they're nice and fluffy and squidgy, and I covered them loosely with cling film, which I'm going to take off. And I have prepared an egg wash, which is just 1 beaten egg. So I know in the original video, the first video, I said that it was 4 eggs. It's actually 2 whole eggs, 1 egg yolk, and then one egg, which we use for the egg wash. So we're going to make sure that's nicely whisked up. And then you're going to brush the top of each challah roll and plait with egg wash. And this is the stage where you can, if you want to, sprinkle on your seeds. If you're using poppy seeds or sesame seeds, I'm going to do some sesame seeds. Obviously don't do sesame seeds if you're allergic to sesame seeds. Make sure that you get into all of the little nooks and crannies of the plait, the egg wash. Okay. So I'm going to sprinkle some of my seeds on top, and then I'm going to put them into the oven. Now I'm going to bake them. I preheated my oven to 180 degrees, which you can do whilst they're having this second half an hour to an hour to prove you can have the oven warming up. And then they're going to go into the oven for about 25 minutes until they are dark golden colour on top, and we'll see whether they're cooked nicely in 25 minutes. Okay. Here's the finished product, fresh out of the oven. These baked for 22 minutes at 180 degrees. It's a fan oven. They've got a really nice golden brown crust from the egg wash, and you can see the poppy seeds on top. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'd love for as many of you as you can to make this, if you can get hold of the ingredients, obviously. And wouldn't it be a nice thing to be able to go and give some of these to your friends and neighbours whilst you are all socially distancing and isolating at home? So enjoy this project. Send me pictures on Show My Homework. Show me how you've done with this, and remember, this batch that I'm going to post the recipe for makes 2 medium challah and 4 challah rolls. You can also freeze these if you want to, so allow them to cool down completely, wrap them tightly in tin foil and pop them in the freezer. And to defrost them, you just take them out the night before, leave them on the work surface, and then in the morning, if you want to, you can pop them in the oven for 5 minutes just to warm up, and they are the best bread in the whole world. Enjoy!